We're learning about brachos, about blessings, and we're using a text that the Alter Rebbe wrote, and we're adapting the text for Bnei Noach, for non-Jews. Not all the details that appear over here actually apply to non-Jews for many reasons. For instance, one very simple reason is when the Alter Rebbe talks about Kiddush, sanctifying the day of Shabbos, the day of Yom Tov, whatever. This doesn't apply to non-Jews, so we just jumped that part, whatever. So we're in chapter 4, and I think we're in law number 7. It's talking about liquids and water specifically, whether you have to make a bracha, a blessing on them, while you're having a meal. And we defined a meal by, in Hebrew it's called a seuda. We defined that by eating bread. A person is actually eating a meal. You're sitting and eating your meal with bread. You don't need to make a blessing on water. You don't need to make a blessing on beer or other liquids you're drinking, except for wine. Wine has its own blessing, and even if you are in the middle of a meal or you're just starting, whatever the case is, you have to make a separate blessing for the wine you're drinking. Not here, later, quite much later. The Rebbe is going to explain, even if you drink many types of wine, there's another blessing. It's not just the blessing of wine. But this applies only, we will learn this later, not today, but this applies only if you're drinking wine, different types of wine, better than the other, and you still have from the previous wine. That means I'm only drinking because I want to taste different types of wine, like real royalty, whatever. So I'm going to drink this bottle and this bottle and this bottle. So you have to make another blessing because you really have wine. So you make another blessing. But whatever the case is, we're not learning that right now. We're talking about a seuda, a meal. Within the context of a meal, you don't make blessings for those foods that are part of the meal. This is what we were learning before. And this includes all liquids, which are drunk because of the meal. Like you drink water because you just ate something and you want to pass that thing, whatever, on. But wine, you have to make a blessing on the wine you drink in the meal. Now again, the Alter Rebbe is talking about, in certain parts of these laws, about Kiddush, about sanctifying the day, which does not apply to Bnei Noach. So I'm going to jump all of that. Let's go to law number 9. All of this, that you don't have to make another blessing and so on, applies when you blessed for your food in one room that you're eating, and you did not leave your place in the middle. But if you're eating in a different room, and there's a whole argument, the Rebbe doesn't go into that, but there's a whole argument, what's called a room within your house, within a different room in your house, usually means really another place from where you cannot see the place where you were eating before. Needless to say, if you're going to move to a different house, suppose you're eating in your house, and your neighbor came in and said, Shalom Aleichem, I would like to invite you to eat with me. Come, let's eat together. So you go to the neighbor's house, you make another blessing. Even though you were already eating and you were already made the blessings, you make another blessing at the beginning of the meal, because you changed your place, completely changed your place. Now, we mentioned in a previous class that that's not the best practice. Best practice definitely is you can go eat with your neighbor, no problem. Let me bless after the food where I'm sitting over here, and then I go to your place and I make another blessing and so on. And you continue eating whatever you want, wherever you want. No problem with that. That's the best practice. Make a blessing after the food and continue. Now, let's suppose you invite somebody or you just sit, whatever, even alone, to drink. So you're drinking something. It doesn't really say what. You're drinking. Before a meal, you're just drinking. You know in a few minutes you're going to have a meal, but you want to drink something. Of course, if we're talking about water and you're drinking because you're thirsty, of course you have to make a blessing. So you make a blessing for the water and so on. But now, let's go to the text. Halacha 11, law number 11. All drinks that you drink before the meal, they don't exempt those things that you eat within the meal or even after the meal. even though you had in mind to drink within the meal also, you still have to make a blessing after the drink you drank before the meal. If you drank, of course, the amount that requires a blessing, we spoke already about amounts and measurements for non-Jews and so on. So the point over here is you're drinking, suppose, Coke, whatever, tea. You're drinking tea before the meal, and you plan to drink tea within the meal. So of course, because you washed, you ate a moitzi, then you don't make a blessing for the tea you drink within the meal because you whatever in case you drink tea within the meal and so on. But the point over here is there's a whole discussion which the truth is it doesn't apply 100% to Bnei Noach, but I'll explain the discussion anyway. If the blessing after the food, Birchas Hamazon, the long blessing after the food that the Jews say for eating bread and so on, actually serves, it's good enough for the tea you drank before the meal. And the answer is no. You have to make a blessing after the tea you drank before the meal because you did not drink the tea for the meal. You drank the tea because you wanted to drink tea. And suddenly, or whatever the case, the time came and you eat your meal. And you forgot to make the after blessing of the tea. So you still have to make the after blessing of the tea. It's independent paths, so to speak, the meal and the drinking tea. In the case of Bnei Noach, which is, I think it's interesting, I would say the following thing. The blessing after the food, even for a meal, after the after blessing is that God created all kinds of souls and so on. That blessing works also for the tea. It's the same blessing. It's everything the same. So suppose you drink tea before your meal and you did not make a blessing. And now you start eating bread. So you make the blessing for the bread and you start eating your bread with cheese and whatever you eat. And then you remember, I didn't make the after blessing for the tea. But when you make the after blessing for whatever meal you ate, I would say, even though I do not have a source, but I would say that that's good enough for the tea also. That's good enough for the tea also. I would say that. Definitely. Unless you actually drank before the meal in order to have more space in your stomach, more hunger, more desire to eat. So you drank for the meal. So the blessing after the meal for sure works for whatever you drank before the meal. The best practice, again, would be to make a blessing after the tea and then make the blessing of the bread and continue your meal. That would be definitely the best practice. Definitely. Okay, law number 12, it talks about wine because you made kiddush. This doesn't apply to non-Jews, so let's leave it out. Let's go to 13. If a person eats before the meal, over here it says in Hebrew, parpreois. Parpreois is like sweet things or even salty things, but not really a meal, like some cookie, some cracker, something like that, before the meal. And then he says, mine mesika, like sweet things or whatever, some fruit, in order to open your stomach and to prepare your heart for the meal. You're preparing yourself for the meal. You're not eating the meal right now. Even though you're not going to eat this after the meal, you still have to make a blessing after this thing that you ate before the meal. You have to make the blessing after that thing before starting your meal. I'm sorry, you don't have to. I'm sorry, yeah. I was reading that. That's why I was like not reading something that didn't sound so nice. Okay, so let's go again. You don't have to make a blessing after those things that you ate before the meal, because whatever bracha, whatever blessing you're going to say after the meal, it's good enough for that. Why? As we said before, because you ate them preparing yourself for the meal. So they're like part of the meal. Since you did not eat them within the meal, you still have to make a blessing before. So somebody came to your house and you're preparing yourself for the meal. The meal didn't come yet. Half an hour more. Okay, so you serve some peanuts, whatever. You decided to serve peanuts. And people are eating peanuts. Why do you eat peanuts? To prepare for the meal, salty thing. Okay. So you make the blessing for the peanuts. You don't need to make a blessing after the peanuts. And you start your meal. And the blessing you're going to make after the meal, it's good enough for the peanuts also. Why? Because you ate the peanuts preparing yourself for the meal. But if you just eat them because you like them, whatever you're eating or drinking, and has no connection to the meal, you're just eating whatever, something sweet, something salty, and so on, you have to make a blessing after that. You have to make a blessing after that before starting the new meal, so to speak. Okay, let's go to chapter 5. This is a short one, but not so simple, so to speak. If a person decided he's not going to eat anymore, or he's not going to drink anymore, that's it, I finished, I'm done. And then you changed your mind, and now you want to continue eating, you want to continue drinking, for whatever reason, you have to make another blessing for this food that you're eating now. Because you finished in your mind, you decided you're not going to eat anymore, so your meal finished. So now you want to continue, make another blessing before eating. Except if you are within the context of a meal. That even if you decided not to eat anymore, that's not really finishing the meal. Because the common custom of people is to continue eating, and you pass from one eating into another eating, and then you talk a little bit, and then you eat a little bit more, and then you continue talking, and this could go for hours. So no problem. You're not actively eating for hours. It's impossible. You're talking and having a nice time and whatever. So that's the normal thing for people within a meal. And furthermore, sometimes a person is sitting in a small meal, so to speak. You really didn't have the intention to be hours there. And whatever, you liked the visitors, and whatever the case is, you start really going for hours. It's no problem. You don't need to make another blessing. It's just part of the same meal. Okay. 2. Same thing happens with other foods. If you know in the moment that you make the blessing hamoitzi for your meal, that God takes bread of the earth and so on, you did not have in mind at all to eat those foods, even if you're talking about bread, like another piece of bread and so on. Or, for instance, you changed your mind and you said, I'm not going to eat anymore, and you moved from your place because you said, I'm not going to eat anymore. When you go back to your seuda, to your meal, you have to make another blessing. Because one thing is to continue your meal. And you talk and you drink and you talk and you eat and so on. But another thing is to move from your place and say, that's it, I'm not eating anymore. You don't need to say anything, it's just within your mind. It's not that you have to talk. Because the custom of people is to continue from one meal to another meal as long as you did not move from your place. But if you move from your place, that's it. Suppose you're eating with somebody, with people that came to visit you, and then you stand up and you walk to the door and say, thank you so much for coming to my house. It was a very nice time. That's it, okay? You're basically kicking your people out. And suddenly you say, why don't we continue a few hours more? Nobody does this. Like, what are you doing? You're nuts. You stand up, you open the door, and then you continue eating. You're nuts. You're crazy. So people don't do this. So that's why, in a case if a person does this, you have to make another blessing. You're really starting a new meal. This is not continuation of the previous meal. All of this, number 3, all of this when you're eating. But when you're drinking, if you finished, you're really decided in your heart that you're not going to drink anymore, and then you change your mind, you have to make another blessing, of course, even if you did not clearly, completely change your mind. I mean, completely decided that you're going to finish drinking. If you just said, why don't we finish? Or if you said, why don't we make a blessing after the food? That's clearly ending the period of drinking. So there's a difference over here between eating and drinking. Eating, it could happen that a person just talks and eats a little bit more, and then you eat another cookie and another whatever. But drinking, if you said, I'm not going to drink anymore, I'm not going to eat anymore, that's finished drinking. That's it. You finished your drink. And if you now change your mind and you want to drink again, you have to make another blessing for that drink that you're drinking now. But if you changed your mind and you go back to your food, you don't have to make another blessing. And if because of that food you want to drink now, also you drink without the blessing. So what would be the case? You're eating and drinking and with somebody or with a group of guests or whatever. And somebody said, okay, that's it. I think we have to go. We have to finish this, whatever. It's late. Yeah, it's really late. And now, for whatever reason, somebody said, oh, I didn't tell you the last secret I had to tell you. And they continue because whatever, for hours, because this secret was such an important thing. He forgot to tell you. Yeah, and you're interested and you want to hear, whatever. And you continue eating. You don't have to make another blessing. But if you want to continue drinking without eating, you have to make another blessing. But if you eat and then you want to drink because you ate something, it was too salty, too sweet, or whatever, you don't make another blessing for that drink because that drink comes because of the food, not because of the drinking itself. Okay, all of those blessings that a person makes because he changed the mind, not changed mind, and so on, all of those blessings do not mean that you have to make another after blessing for each blessing you made in the beginning. No. You make one general after blessing for everything, and it's enough. So they don't really work like parentheses. You have to open parentheses and you have to finish parentheses. If you don't finish it, it's weird. Like, where does it finish? I don't understand the text. So it doesn't work like this. In this case, you can open many, many blessings at the beginning, and then you just finish with one blessing, and that's it. Halacha number 9. The rest we're going to jump it because it's not such a practical thing. Halacha number 9 is really practical. You don't make an after blessing, even for the Jews, the after blessing, the long one that is a biblical blessing and so on, except all the time that you did not digest the food in your stomach and so on. This would be, depending on the type of food, generally an hour and a half. Generally an hour, between an hour and a half. So suppose you ate your meal and you forgot to make the after blessing. You just forgot, whatever. You just continue doing your things. And 2 hours afterwards, you remember, oh, I didn't say the after blessing. That's it. You lost it. You don't say after blessing now. Why? Because the food is considered already passed through the system, and that's it. To the point that you would even eat something more right now. Because you're already hungry. I'm not saying you're dying of hunger. I'm just saying, yeah, I could eat something more. Like after a meal, we just finished a meal. I don't want to eat anything. That's it. I'm fine. I don't want to eat now. But time passes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. You would say, yeah, I can eat something. It's fine. I could not eat also. I'm not dying, but yeah, I could eat something. So at that moment, for sure, your meal finished. For sure, the food passed through the system. And you can't make an after blessing for that. What do you mean? It's just gone already. Don't make an after blessing for that. Okay. The same thing happens with 2 foods, 2 meals, so to speak. You cannot say one after blessing for 2 meals unless there was not this time in the middle, 1 hour, between 1 hour and 1 hour and a half. Because again, it's considered to be digested in the stomach, in the intestines and so on. So the point is, in the best practice, there's always a best practice for brachos, for blessings. The best practice would be you finish your meal, take a few seconds, say the after bracha, the after blessing, and then continue your life. Because if you're going to stand up and do one thing and another thing, and time passes and the mind goes further, boom, you forgot. And you're not saying your after blessing. Okay, chapter 6. Very interesting chapter, long and interesting. All the trees, any tree, from the point that the tree produced a fruit, something that is called a peri, in Hebrew, a fruit, even if it's a very small fruit, but still called a fruit, you have to make the blessing that it applies to that particular fruit, which is boire priya, that God creates different types of fruits of the tree. The Alter Rebbe over here brings in parentheses, there was some fruits they didn't have in Russia at that time. So the Alter Rebbe doesn't talk about the fruits very small, very, very small, because they didn't even have those fruits. They came from outside, like imported fruits. So this applies only if the fruit is not bitter or the fruit is sour, like terribly small and terribly not eatable. It's going to be a good fruit, very sweet, but right now it's too small, it's not really ready, mature, whatever, to be eaten, and you want to eat it. The taste is terrible, but you want to eat it. Okay, you're kind of nuts. All right, you want to eat it. Don't make a brach on that. You don't make a blessing. This is not something people eat. You decided to eat it? Okay, you are crazy. So you don't make a blessing for that. Even if some crazy people would eat it. It's not just me. It's me and 10 other guys in the world. We're all crazy and we like eating these kinds of fruits. No. This is a concept called in halacha, batla daitet zel kol adam. Your understanding of things is nullified to everybody else's understanding, which is the normal, behavior for people. Your behavior is not normal. So I'm not going to change halacha law because you're crazy. No, you're crazy, and point. And that's it. Now, if you took this little fruit, very sour, very not eatable fruit, and you put it in an oven, or you put it some sugar, or whatever, you did something to it, and now it's eatable, it's not called a fruit. And you say, Shiakol niya b'dvarer. You say that everything was created by his words. Why? If it is a fruit, because it's not an eatable fruit. Nobody eats this thing calling it a fruit. It will be a fruit, very nice, but right now it's not. Even though you made out of it something that people would eat and would say, yeah, this is tasty, interesting, but still the thing itself is not a fruit. It's not called a fruit by the Torah. It's not eatable, so you don't make the specific blessing for the fruit, you make shiakol. You make a lower level blessing because you're eating something in a way that is not called a fruit. Second law, same thing happens with some almonds. I don't know exactly which type of almond he's talking about, that are very bitter. Whatever the case is, I don't know exactly. You don't make the blessing when they're big, and people don't actually eat them. Whatever the case is, I don't know exactly what the detail of which fruit he's talking about. I don't know. He calls it an almond, but we're talking about something very bitter, big, and people don't eat this. And people don't eat it even like forcedly. Like, no, this is not food. However, if you sweeten these things through fire or anything else, then you do say boire priya eitz. You do say that God creates the fruit of the tree. What's the difference with the first law? Very interesting, simple and interesting difference. When something is not called a fruit, that's it. You're not going to say the blessing for fruits. Usually people don't eat it. That's why it's not called a fruit. People don't eat this. You changed it, like with fire or with smoke or whatever you did, and you want to eat it and it's eatable, you don't make the blessing for the fruit because it was never a fruit. Now, in the second case, it is a fruit. It's not a tasty fruit. Okay, people don't eat it because it's not a tasty fruit. But it is a fruit. Okay, there's a tree, there's a fruit, and so on. So people don't eat it. I don't care. Now, if you changed it, and now people say, "Oh, this is tasty. This is good," because you put fire, smoke, or whatever you put. So it was a fruit. So you make the blessing for the fruit. That's halacha number 2. Now, the garinim. Garinim is the things that are inside the fruit, like inside an olive. I forgot the name in English now. Now, garinim, these things inside the fruit, if they are sweet, sweet doesn't really mean like sugar taste. Sweet means like something nice, eatable, good, that's okay. And they are eatable, they are part of the fruit. They are still called fruit, even though it's not the real fruit, it's just a part of the fruit. It's still called fruit, and if you're going to eat just that, you have to make a blessing for the fruit. Boire prio eitz, it's a part of the fruit. Okay, it's not the main fruit. It's not the main part of the fruit. Yeah, okay, but it's still a fruit. It comes from the tree, and people eat this. People usually eat this. However, if they are bitter, you don't make a blessing at all for that. People don't eat this. And even if you sweeten them through fire or something else, you just say Shiakol Ni'avidvaroi. Just say that everything was created by his words. So let's take, I don't know exactly which fruit this would apply, but the thing that is inside an olive, it's so hard, so people don't eat it because it's too hard. But suppose it wouldn't be so hard, it's still not really the olive. No, it doesn't have the same taste, and no. So if people would eat it for whatever reason, so you make the blessing for the fruit on that also. Unless it's too bitter, you just don't make a blessing at all. And if you work on it, it's shakol. You lower down the category of blessing and you make a blessing that everything was created by his words. Now, that was about what's inside the fruit. What about what's outside the fruit? Clipping. Clipping, so it's like the thing outside the fruit. Like, for instance, the orange covering, whatever. That people sweeten them. They put sugar on them and something like that. You don't make boire prio eitz. You don't say the bracha, the blessing of the God creates the fruits of the tree, because they're not the main part of the tree. People do not, like producers in the fields and so on, they don't plant trees to eat the shell of the fruit. The shell of the oranges. We're going to plant a whole tree of oranges just to eat the outside of the orange. No, people don't do that. It's not normal. So in this case, you would not say boire prio eitz, that God creates fruits of the trees. But are those authorities who say that also the shell of the, whatever the case, whatever the name is, of the fruit, it's considered part of the fruit itself. And you do say boire prio eitz. So there's a discussion over here. There's an argument. Some authorities say you do say boire prio eitz because the shell is also part of the fruit. Some authorities say you don't say because it's not part of the fruit. Now, the rule is, we learned this rule, Safek brachos le'akel. If you have a doubt on a blessing, you have to be lenient. And that would be, in this case, that you say boire pri ho'adama. That this is something that was growing from the earth. Nobody doubts that. The only question over here is is it a fruit or is not a fruit. So the blessing for the fruit, don't make it, because we don't know if this is called a fruit or not. But the blessing for that God created the something from the earth, of course it is. So you make a blessing, and you fulfill the obligation according to all opinions. 5 types of fruits that are not really good quality, really bad quality, because they grow just wild, in the fields, and nobody was taking care of them and so on. He brings over here small apples, small pears, I don't know. They call them borin, I don't know what it is. Even though they are able to be eaten, they're still not called a fruit. and you say Shiakol Niyah Bidvaro for that. You say that everything was created from the word of God. Why? Because again, it's not really a fruit. It was not planted for a fruit, for to be a fruit. It's a wild fruit, and it's not really taken care of. He brings over here that are small. I don't know why the emphasis on small is. If you see, he says small apples, small pears. I don't know. Whether you ate them raw or you actually cook them, so you still say Shiakol Niyah Bidvaro. Like wild fruits, you don't make the blessing of the fruit itself. You make the blessing that everything was created by His word. But if you're talking about nuts that they grow in a field, they are important fruits, and you make the blessing of Borei Pri Eitz for the nuts, because that, even if it's a wild nut, you still make a Borei Pri Eitz. That God created different types of roots from the trees. Same thing happens with herbs that grow in the field, that people did not plant them, like they just grew, whatever, and they are bad quality by themselves. Like it's not really like grass. People don't eat grass. If you have to eat grass for whatever reason, because it's the only thing you have to eat, there's nothing else over there, so you say Shiakol Niyah Bidvaro. Everything was created by His word, because it's not really tasty. And there was a group of music many years ago, I don't know, in Brazil. I married a Brazilian, and I had already relations with Brazil many years ago. I learned Portuguese, whatever. So there was a group. They were called Chitas, like Titans, whatever. And they had one song. And the whole song was a long song, and it's just very few words. The song was Comida e pasto, in Portuguese. Comida e pasto, bebida e água. You want food? You have grass. You want drink? You have water. Você tem fome de quê? Você tem sede de quê? Assim, this way it finishes. What are you hungry of? What are you thirsty of? There's no hunger, no thirst. Food is available all around. But you want caviar and you want this and that. That's a problem of society already. Food and drink, it's available. That was the whole song. It was like a protesting song, something like that. Okay. So over here, he's eating grass. For whatever reason, he's eating grass. He heard the music and the song, and he's eating grass. So you make Shiakol Niyah Bidvaro. It's not really food. It's not really proper food. Now, over here he brings, interesting, the Arizal, a very important Kabbalist in Eretz Israel, Tzfas, 1500s. The year 1500, he used to make a blessing of Borei Pri Adama, that God creates fruits from the earth, on the fruits that grow in the earth, and Borei Pri Eitz, and that God creates fruits from the tree on this grass that grows in the tree. Even if you're not just the grass, even if you're talking about very low type of grass or fruits and so on, he would still make the blessing. That's all the Alter Rebbe brings. It's not saying you have to do this. This is brought down in the name of the Arizal. Now, number 6, very important law. What's the sign to know what's the fruit of a tree and what's the fruit of the earth? What's the difference? So he says like this. If you have a low tree, of course, if you have an orange, everybody knows orange is a tree. Yeah, I know. Apples is a tree. Yeah, okay. The problem is when you have doubts. It's a small tree. I don't know. Is it tree, earth? What is this? So he says like this. If you have a low tree, like the sneh, it was the tree that Moshe Rabbeinu saw in the desert. I don't know the name of the sneh in English. Forget it. When you have a doubt, is this a tree or not? So there are those authorities who say that every tree that makes fruits from year to year, again, over here we're discussing what's a tree, okay? So the word is tree over here in the translation, but we're discussing, is this a tree or not? So everything that appears like as a tree that makes fruits from year to year, even if the tree that is above the earth, the main part of the tree, the trunk of whatever of the tree, and the branches of the tree get completely destroyed in the winter, but the root is in the earth, and it goes back and grows again, the trunk of the tree, the branches of the tree, the different parts of the tree, and the fruits of the tree, the leaves of the tree, and so on, in the second year. So you have a nice tree, gets all destroyed, but there's a root over there in winter, and then it grows again and comes up fruit. That's called a tree, complete tree, absolute tree. That's a tree. And whatever fruits this tree produces, you say Borei Pri Ha'etz. That's opinion number one. Then you have opinion number two. There are those who argue with this and they say, no, wait a second. In the winter, the whole trunk of the tree, the main part, gets destroyed and grows again from its root. That's not called a tree. That's called something that grows from the earth regarding the blessing. Because in the winter it destroys, it disappears basically. And there are those who say that even if the root still is in the ground during all the winter, only that the branches they fall in the winter and they grow again in the summer from the trunk of the tree itself, but the branches get lost in the winter and they produce new leaves and new fruits and so on. Those fruits are not considered part of a tree, fruits of the tree. So over here, this third opinion is like very, very strict, because even if you see the whole main part of the tree, but the branches fell, of course the leaves also fell, but the branches fell, that's not called a tree. Whatever fruit grows from that, it's a Pri Adama. It is the fruit of the earth. Now, having said all the three opinions, you have to worry about them in the first instance to bless Borei Pri Adama, that God creates the fruit of the earth, for whatever fruits come out of these types of trees, quote unquote. And if you make the blessing Borei Pri Ha'etz, you make the blessing that God creates the fruits of the tree, even for a tree that gets completely wiped out, so to speak. The trunk and the leaves and the branches and everything in the winter, and the only thing you still have is the source, and you made for the fruit of that tree Borei Pri Ha'etz, that God creates the fruits of the tree, you still fulfill your obligation. Don't make another bracha. Because there is one opinion that says that that's also a tree. That's also a tree. All of these, number 7, all of this applies when the different parts of the tree, the branches and the leaves and so on, they go back and grow branches from the trunk of the tree itself, and these branches, they sprout out or bring out leaves and fruits. But not that the trunk of the tree itself, that which is hard and so on. So the fruits don't come out of the trunk of a tree itself. They grow out of branches and leaves and flowers and fruits and so on. But there are certain types of trees that are very soft, like banana. He's defining right now banana, what it means a banana. I don't think the Alter Rebbe ever saw a banana, but whatever. This is what he's defining. There are certain types of trees that are soft, and the leaves and the fruits, they go out of the tree itself, like the trunk of the tree itself. This is not called a tree at all. To halacha, to law. Okay, I'm not against bananas. I eat bananas. The point is, halachically, that's not called a tree. Everybody agrees to this. On regards to the blessing of Borei Pri Ha'etz, that God creates fruits of the tree, you don't say for the banana Borei Pri Ha'etz. No, Borei Pri Adama. The banana, like they grow many bananas from the tree itself, from the trunk of the tree itself. Now, even though, interesting parenthesis, which is not really practical, but let's go. Even though when you're talking about the blessing for reyach, for smells, that's still called a tree. There are different types of blessings for smell. What people do is to bless boire mine besamim, that creates all kinds of aromas, nice smells, and so on. That's the regular custom of people, and it's okay. However, if you really know that this aroma came from a thing that grows on a tree, you could say boire atzei besamim, that God creates trees or wood, whatever, that has nice aroma. Like for instance, this thing that people use it in cakes with apple. Okay, the name just popped out of my mind, but whatever. People use it with, it's a sweet thing. People use it with cakes, apples, and so on. Okay. So over here we're talking about eating something. On regards to the blessing of eating, this is not called a tree. A banana is not a tree. On regards of the blessing of smell, okay, if there's some smell that comes out of the banana, okay, you could say bore atze besamim. People again usually don't say that. People usually say bore mine besamim, and you're fine. It's okay. That God creates all kinds of smells. Now, even if the trunk of the tree, the main part of the tree, does not disappear in the winter, rather it's still over there in the winter, during all the winter, and it becomes a little bit like moisty, wet, whatever, and like revives, something like that, and brings out leaves and fruits in the next year. I don't know exactly how the banana works. Still, this is called boire pri adama. This is called that God creates all kinds of fruits from the earth. And he brings a few examples, like tutim. Tutim is like these small, like black berries or something like that, some berries that they grow in our lands that are called molines. I don't know what this is. And other kinds of berries that grow in a... However, all other kinds of berries that grow on a tree, on a complete, absolute halachic tree, if they are important fruits, again, not wild fruits, that's a different story, we said about that. If they are like fruits, 100% fruits, like for instance in Poland, they call them jogdes, black jogdes. This is blackberries probably. You say bore pri eitz. This is a fruit from a tree, nobody doubts that. Number 8, and those berries that are red, that you find them in the fields in the month of Tammuz. Tammuz is summer, like hot, really hot summer. That's Tammuz. They have a few types of these berries. There are berries that they also find in the winter, but they only have like a small liquid inside of it, and people just drink the liquid and throw the thing away. You say shiakol niyo bidvarai. You say that everything was created by his word, because this is only for the liquid. You don't really eat the fruit, whatever the fruit it is. It's just the liquid. He's going to explain it in the next chapter, but for liquid of fruits, suppose orange juice, you don't say bore pri eitz. You say shiakol niyo bidvarai. You don't say the blessing for the tree, fruit of the tree. You say the blessing for the fruit. That everything was created by his word. Number 9, the same thing happens with a person that sucks the liquid that is inside of the fruit and is not going to eat the fruit. Like the body of the fruit itself, he doesn't want it, except for grapes, that when a person sucks the liquid of the grapes, he calls it wine, but of course it's not wine. If it's inside the grapes, it's grape juice, but whatever. He calls it wine. Even that wine that is inside of the grape by itself, you still say bore pri eitz, because that's part of the fruit itself. Like it's an important drink. We said before that wine has its main blessing, which is bore pri agofen. So since over here you're quote unquote, drinking wine in a weird way, you're sucking the wine out of the grape, so you go down one level. Next level of Bori Priya Gofen that creates the fruit of the vine is Bori Priya Eitz. Oh, so you say Bori Priya Eitz. Of course, if a person is drinking grape juice, like you buy grape juice and you drink it, is Bori Priya Gofen. You have to make the blessing of the wine as if it was wine, because halachically there's no. It's what I'm saying is not 100% right, but it doesn't really matter right now. Halachically, basically, it's the same, grape juice and wine, basically the same. Now, if you find a grape in the field and you want to suck the liquid inside of the grape, you say Borei Pri Eitz. You don't say the blessing for the wine itself. However, if you drink like the honey of dates, if this honey is inside of the dates, or the honey is just coming out, some dates are really sweet and they have a lot of honey and so on, you say Shiakol Niyo Bidvarei. You don't say the blessing for the date. The date, of course, is Borei Pri Eitz, that God created the fruit of the tree. But over here, you're drinking like the honey of the dates, you say Shiakol Niyo Bidvarei, that everything was created by His word. Because all the liquid that comes out of the fruits, it's not called a fruit, except for what comes out of olives and grapes. Only that the oil that comes out of the olives, you can't eat it. Otherwise, you're going to be in the bathroom the whole day. So you can't eat the oil unless you mix it with something else. So usually, if you're going to drink the oil, you don't make a blessing at all. You're hurting yourself. You're not really eating. So don't eat oil. Over here, we're talking about olive oil, but the same thing applies to any other oil. It's the same thing. So don't make the blessing at all unless you mix it with something else, as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain in the next chapter. Law number 10. All the fruits, whether it's a fruit from the tree or a fruit from the earth, that are good, eatable, that's what it means. Raw, suppose a raw apple, it's good, people eat it. And they are also good cooked. People eat cooked apples, it's okay. You make the blessing that corresponds to whatever fruit you're eating. Suppose you eat cooked apple, so you make Borei Pri Eitz. Because people eat cooked apples, it's a good food, whatever. Whether they're raw or they're cooked. And even if the normal way of eating this thing is raw, because most of the people do not cook this food, this fruit, that the blessing, even so, the blessing doesn't change because you cooked it. Just because of the fact that it became a fruit while it was raw, the cooking itself does not nullify the law of a fruit from this thing. Again, the example would be a cooked apple. It's still called cooked apple. It's not just a puree or whatever, something like that, weird thing. No. It's cooked apple. Okay, go eat. But all of this applies if the taste did not change in a bad way. So, okay, it's true. Cooked apples do not taste exactly like apples, like raw apples, but it's still a good taste. It's okay. It's completely eatable. It's sweet and blah, blah, blah. So, in this case, we're talking about something that did not change for the worse the taste that it has. So that means the cooking did not change the taste in a bad way. They're good to be eaten raw or cooked. However, if this fruit is good raw, it's better raw than cooked. And again, here the perfect example is the apple. Of course, a person can say, I like raw apples more than cooked apples. Yeah, that's okay, no problem. But the truth is that the taste is okay. It's good and people eat it, so no problem with that. Over here, we're talking about something that by cooking it, it became something really not so tasty. No. It's not that I don't like it. People don't eat this. Like cooked oranges. I don't know. People don't eat cooked oranges. It's a weird thing. It's like, I don't know what you're doing with the orange. So over here, in that example, because the taste changed by cooking it in a bad way, now it's for the worse. So you say she'akol niya bidvaroi. For the cooked orange, I don't know who thought about it, but you say she'akol niya bidvaroi. No, this is really not an orange. No. But if you, after cooking it, now you fry it with some honey. Fry it doesn't really mean direct, in this case, literally with oil. It means that you passed some sugar or some honey on it and with heat, and it like became stuck to the fruit. So it's like a real sweet thing now. And now it's improved. Now the taste is really improved. So now you make the blessing for that. Boire prio adama or boire prio eis. That creates the fruit of the earth or the fruit of the tree. So again, over here we had something good. By itself, raw, boire prio eis. Let's suppose, boire prio eis. Now you cooked it. Oh, what did you do with this? You destroyed it. I want to eat it. Shakol nea bidvaroi. And now you put some sugar in it and whatever with heat and so on. Oh, boire prio eis again. Now it's good. Needless to say that if you, in the beginning, you didn't do all this process that I just described. In the beginning, you just took, for instance, an orange and you put some sugar on top of it or whatever. You cooked it with meat, and it became really tasty. Or in any case, it just is not. The taste is not worse than before. It doesn't have to be a really good taste. Whatever, it's not worse than before. It's okay. It's eatable. And before means that when they were raw. So this honey or whatever taste you put it, or the grease itself of the meat, it's a secondary thing, and you just make the bracha, the blessing that corresponds to that particular fruit. And the Alter Rebbe brings into between parentheses, interesting, that if you're really eating the meat, one thing is to eat the taste of the meat. Okay, the taste of the meat, you don't need to make a blessing for the taste of the meat. It's enough with the blessing of the fruit. But if you're going to eat the meat, that requires a blessing by itself. Everything was created by his word.